Welcome back to your Foundations of Yoga series. Sorry, I'm like crouching on the ground. The hazards of being nomadic are that you are often in unpredictable filming locations and have to kind of improvise. But as long as you can see me and hear me, we're good. So today we're going to talk about and work through plank pose, which pretty much everyone I think is familiar with from any exercise routine. You do plank a lot in all kinds of exercise, right? And we use it a lot in yoga as well. It is one of the foundational poses, I would say. I would also say it's one of the more problematic foundational poses, along with chaturanga and navasana, because people often, for ego reasons, want it to look a certain way and like be able to hold a certain shape when they honestly don't have the strength yet to do that in correct alignment. And you know, it ends up being a big ego thing, like, oh, I'm gonna do plank, but like I'll never drop to my knees. Like, that's a girl push-up. First of all, can we stop with that kind of gendering? So, I mean, you know, okay, who's the joke on later when your shoulders are screwed up, your wrists are screwed up, your elbows are screwed up, your low back hurts because you don't know how to do this position with proper engagement and alignment. So, you know, I would try to really let go of the ego in all of yoga, but especially in these kinds of poses where the ego comes in and tries to tell us like, oh no, I have to look a certain way. Like, yeah, you need to have proper alignment, but you don't have to be up doing like the hardest expression of the pose. Often it's harder to do it on your knees if you are engaging everything correctly. If you are up on your hands and toes, not engaging everything correctly, actually not that hard, not nearly as hard as it should be, and you're dumping into your joints. It's just, I could talk about this forever, but don't do it. If you can't do it properly, just come down to your damn knees, okay? All right, so that being said, let's see if you guys can see me. I'm gonna pull this back just a little bit. Okay, so we all know we want our hands under our shoulders, right? And also, if you are watching this at home, try to put the video in front of you so that you can look straight ahead. I'm going to be looking sideways at the camera. We really don't want to be doing that as we practice the pose because it's not great for alignment of the spine. You always want to be looking forward and just maybe like a foot in front of your hands. We don't want to be up here. We also don't want to be down here. Keep the back of your neck nice and long. So hands directly under the shoulders. So under the shoulders, as you can see this way, and under the shoulders from the side. And then you want to spread your fingers nice and wide and root down into your hands. All right, so if you're up on your toes, you want to stretch your legs back, press into the toes, and press your heels straight back. Feet are about hip-width distance apart. So you're pressing back strongly from your heels, lifting your quadriceps to lift your hamstrings. And then notice, this is the tendency usually. So I want to keep my back straight, lengthen my tailbone towards my heels, and come up onto my toes. And then notice, I'm kind of like doing this, right? So this is what I see commonly a lot. People keep the hips lifted because it's too hard for them to keep the hips low, or people leave the hips down in this weird like half up dog, half plank. And they're really straining your low back here. This is really bad for you. So you want to be in the mid-range point. I'm going to drop my knees for a second because honestly it's really hard to hold that and talk in correct alignment. So I would actually maybe suggest practicing this one with a mirror the first few times to get the hang of really noticing where your body is in space, because a lot of times people don't realize that their hips are up or too high or too low. And to help avoid this, to help avoid the swaying of the back, so to help avoid swaying the back down like this, we want to really pull our abs in and lengthen the tailbone down towards the back of the heels or the knees, wherever you are. So if you're in plank on your knees, it's the same idea, but your knees count as your feet. So instead of thinking of your feet as the back of the pose, you're thinking of your knees as the back of the pose. Knees are about hip-width distance. Still shoulders right over the wrists. And you still want to drop the hips so that they're in line with your knees and your shoulders. Kind of hard to see. Let's turn a little. So you don't want to be here. You don't want to be here. You want to be right in the middle with as straight of a spine as you can get. So another reason it can be really hard to maintain a correct plank, there's a lot of engagement going on and you're putting a lot of weight into your wrists. It's really hard to keep your wrists safe if you're doing a lot of planks and not engaging correctly. You want to pull the abs in. I'm just going to reiterate all these things. You want to pull the abs in, lengthen the tailbone, press strongly into all 10 fingers and the palms of your hands, and then pull your chest gently forward and press into your hands. So you're pressing into your hands, and that'll start to dome your upper back, and then you pull your chest forward, and that gets you to the happy medium of where we want to be. This is a lot of engagement in the upper back and the shoulders and the arms, guys. So being up here and trying to keep the legs firm, trying to lengthen the tailbone, and then staying really energized through the legs, and pressing into the hands to keep some weight out of the wrists. There's a lot going on. It's a lot. It's hard to do it correctly, honestly, when you're not used to doing it correctly and engaging all of that. It's hard to do. So I would say for this pose and this practice, first and foremost, I'm schmeary. Sorry, I'm in Costa Rica and it's like just sweaty life over here. Sweat central, oh my goodness. Sweat central in the jungle. So really want you to drop the ego when you're practicing plank, you guys. You might be holding this for several breaths. And rather than sacrificing the alignment, and what I mean by dumping into the joints is when you're in these engaged poses where there's a lot of stress on your joints, if you're not activating the muscles around those joints, then you're dumping right into the joint. And so then you're like sitting in the joint and putting all your weight into it. And that is why we get a lot of wrist troubles with these kind of poses, with chaturanga, with plank, even with like up dog, where we're on our hands in like this really severe flexion position. It's not natural for our wrists, and we do it a lot in yoga, so we really need to be mindful of them and protect them. And then of course here we want to engage the core in. We want to keep the back and the chest equally broad, so that's that pushing down into the hands. And then when you feel the upper back is kind of like doming and the chest is caving in, then you just pull your chest forward and up slightly between your biceps. And that'll even out the distance so that you have the broadness across the chest and across the shoulders as well. And then if you are on the knees, again, you want to think of the knees as if they're your feet. So if you're up on your feet in plank, you know, you want that long line of extension all the way from the heels to the back of the head. If you're down on your knees, then you want the same thing from the backs of your knees to the crown of your head. So you might end up with the hands a little further forward and the shoulders a little further forward than you think. And you want your hips and pelvis really dropped low, but still engaging in the abs. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot to think about. Think about all those engagement points as you work on your plank. And please start on your knees and play with like the proper engagement just in the upper body to start with and see how that feels. And then once you feel comfortable in the engagement in the arms and the chest and in the torso, then play with coming up onto your toes and firming through the legs, pressing the heels back, and see how that feels, you know, and don't feel like you have to stay up there. Come down to the knees when you need to. I have a lot to say about this pose, obviously, so please comment if you have any questions or thoughts or any experiences yourself. I am passionate about these engaging the muscles and activating and having proper alignment in these poses because I myself, when I was younger, you know, wasn't really taught correctly and didn't practice yoga correctly for the first several years that I did it because I just, you know, wasn't going to privates or like getting the feedback or asking the questions that I needed to. And so I have a lot of wrist issues. I have a lot of shoulder issues. Elbows not yet, but we'll see, because of practicing yoga so frequently and so poorly. So, yeah. Please, 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 just let your ego go. All right, thank you so much. I will see you next time, and take care of your body and yourself.